Hello everyone. So as a knitter, I usually have a goal of completing projects that I start. I mean, that is the desired outcome, to have a finished piece of knitting, to say like, hey, this is my thing. But unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. Because I can start the project pretty optimistically, but then due to circumstances, mostly disregarding gauge, the project has to be stopped and then torn out so I could reuse the yarn. So this is a project that is getting stopped in the mid-tracks. This was supposed to be a hat. And you can see from the hat that it's kind of big on me. I took the pattern from a kid's book. It wanted me to do 96 stitches. I saw how snugly it fit on the little kid in the book and thought, oh, it needs to be bigger for me. So I increased the stitch count from 96 to 120. And it's a tad bit too big for me. I mean, look at it. It's going into my eyes. So while I bought this yarn specifically to make this hat that I have a plan for, I can't keep going in this like general direction, because if I did, I would always be kind of bothered by the fact that the hat is a little bit too big, or the fact that it's like covering my eyes could get in the way. You could say, hey Becky, why don't you just like roll it up like this? Well, that also interferes with another plan I had for this hat, which I'm going to tell you about after I tell you about what I'm going to do with this hat now. So I had some stitch markers in place. I already took them out. So when a knitter has a project that they're not going to continue, or when they want to undo their knitting, there are two different terms that they use to explain it. The first one's called tinking. It's just simply knit backwards. And tinking is good for those small things where you just want to undo one stitch like that. And that's good if you have like less than a row to go back. But if you're getting rid of the whole darn thing, like wholesale get rid of, that's when we go to the other method, which is called frogging. Let me just pull the needle out. It's called frogging because you rip it. And at the end of frogging, the piece is croaked. This way, I can get rid of the knitting and I can restart the knitting perhaps with the proper gauge. But I don't, I'm not stuck with wasting any yarn, because I haven't made a cut in this yarn yet. And while that part of the yarn tail is not ideal, we can continue with this not making it cut. So literally, we don't care about it. Just hit some paintbrushes there. Can just keep pulling it just like this. Now, why was I making a hat to begin with? At work, they had me wear a walkie-talkie the other day. And it sounds like I'm going to have to wear that walkie-talkie a little bit more. There was no clip on the walkie-talkie, and there was no earpiece, which means it was kind of awkward to hold. Also, it's good to roll the yarn midway between frogging it every so often, so that way you're not stuck with a big mess at the end. But anyway, back to the walkie-talkie. With the no clip and no earpiece, it meant that it was going to be a lot harder to hear things from the walkie-talkie, and I already have a difficult enough time hearing things in that place anyway. So, I mean, part of me was thinking, like, why don't I just buy an earpiece? But considering they have metal detectors and AirPods and other like hearing devices are forbidden, I didn't want to risk my job that way. and putting it in my pants pocket put it too far from my head for me to hear it clearly. So I was thinking if I made a hat, I could make a pocket for the walkie-talkie, and then the walkie-talkie would be on my ears. But if I were to sew, so I used the pattern for like a hat that had ear flaps, because it's like instead of the ear flap, I could just make a pocket for the walkie-talkie. And that wasn't my first idea. My first idea was to make a holster with tape and paper. And that lasted 15 minutes before the holster broke. I was worried about the tape straps, but it was the paper that broke. Yeah. So this was plan B. Yeah, I go like that. Boom. This is a cow now. If I hadn't started decreasing it. Like, look at how much extra space is there. That's too much for a hat. And considering like the weight of the walkie-talkie was going to like distort the yarn anyway, I don't need this hat to be loose. I need this hat to be somewhat tighter so it doesn't affect my glasses, and it doesn't affect, like, I can move around without losing the walkie-talkie, because if I keep it in my arms all the time, at some point it's going to get lost. Although arm cuff, maybe arm cuff might be a better idea now that I think about it, because a walkie-talkie is also heavy. But having that weight on my head does not sound like a good idea. But having an arm cuff means that weight's on my arm, and I can handle a little bit more weight on my arm. Although, considering what I do with my arm, it might make it more likely that the walkie-talkie's gonna fall off. Of course, there's the added disadvantage that I may look like a dork. And to that I say, I've been wearing a fanny pack to over a year now to work willingly. Like, it's not part of the uniform. I just chose to wear a fanny pack. So I'm okay with looking a little bit like a dork if it means I get pockets. I started wearing a fanny pack at work so that way I could just carry my water bottles on me at all times. Instead of like leaving my water bottle down, it's like, where'd my water bottle go? So yeah, that was the plan. And I mean, I bought this yarn specifically for this purpose, so I'll have to like start it again. Maybe I'll actually follow the pattern this time and see how that works. If it actually fits around my head. Yeah, we're at the point where like the yarn, I can just kind of like wrap the yarn and pull it at the same time. I kind of didn't want to have that part off screen, so there you go. Sometimes when it comes to like tearing stuff out, I like to think about it a little bit before I commit to it, because I mean, I put a lot of work into it, you know? I don't want to waste all that work, and I've already spent like 3 hours on this thing. 3 hours of knitting is it's not something to sneeze at, you know? But I waited enough, and it's like, yeah, I already know the piece of knitting is awkward. I'm not going to wear it. At least this is an amazing color. The texture is kind of cheap, but it's an amazing color. I did purposely buy it cheap though, so that way if it got destroyed by my place of work, I wouldn't feel so bad about it. It's like, yeah, it's cheap yarn. It's not like I used expensive mohair. It's like, that would have been a shame. Because every time when I come home from work, there's literally like a layer of dirt on all the parts that were not covered by cloth. I look like Pigpen from Peanuts, pretty much. Why was that comic strip called Peanuts? I guess maybe because their characters had like peanut-like heads, or maybe their bodies looked like peanuts. Because I read that for years. There's not a single peanut that ever really shows up in the strip. Yep, we almost at the end here. Also, it's like, hey, Becky, why are you knitting a hat to hold a walkie-talkie when you could just ask work to provide, like, some sort of earpiece for you? And to that I say, I come from parents who like to be prepared. Like, literally, when it comes to creating, like, a home improvement project, it's not a complete home improvement project until my dad has had to go to Lowe's for at least one reason or another. And my mom was always kind of big on buying little gadgets to make life easier. There you go. So this is just like a learned behavior that I inherited, honestly. There you go. The hat is all gone. That was today's entertainment. Have a nice day.